About 6 months ago, I made a video called The Death of a Game Studio, where I discussed Dauntless being released on Steam alongside an overhaul of the game that emphasized greedy microtransactions, reset player progress, completely betrayed the player's trust, and was but one part of Phoenix Labs' overall downfall. The topic of that video aged like fine wine because, to no one's surprise, on May 29th, 2025, the Dauntless servers were taken offline and the game was laid to rest, taken out back old Yellow style, and Dauntless is now entirely unplayable, which is a bit of a shame if you ask me. Dauntless was a flawed game, driven by a studio with its fair share of ups and downs. It was a game that sought to bring the Monster Hunter playstyle to an MMO setting, unfortunately at a time when Monster Hunter itself was exploding onto a global market. And yet it was still a game I liked, a game that had ideas that were interesting and in the right hands may have been a powerhouse to stand against Capcom's frontrunner, especially with how much folks are disgruntled over Monster Hunter Wilds at the moment. But alas, that was not the case, and it just so happens that the idea behind games being taken entirely offline, never to be seen again, is a bit of a hot topic right now. Stop killing games is a movement I had heard of, but never much cared for. Not because I don't enjoy games or disagree with the premise, but because I'm just not a big online gamer. Aside from a crippling addiction to League of Legends, which, I mean, if that game was taken entirely offline, never to be seen again, my life would probably improve. My favorite games, and the ones I spend the most time with, are solo offline experiences for the most part, and I tend to move on to the next one once I've had my fill. Even Monster Hunter I tend to enjoy playing solo more so than online, and so I personally have never really had an instance where a game I enjoyed or loved was suddenly erased from existence. That changed with Dauntless though, and with the Stop Killing Games movement surging in popularity recently, it made me think again about how important that cause is, and it turns out it's pretty damn important. Consumer rights are one of the very few ways the general populace can have a fair go in the world we currently live in. They vary between countries, and I'm personally only familiar with our own here in Australia, but the general idea is that when we choose to go out and spend our money on our wants and needs, we should have certain guarantees that those things work as intended, are of a high quality, and are ours to own. The video game industry is the largest entertainment industry in the whole world, absolutely gapping the film and music industry in sheer revenue, and yet it seems that the consumer is only getting more and more screwed as time goes on. There are countless issues on this front. Recently, Nintendo came under fire with the cost of Mario Kart World setting a new precedent for video game pricing, and their ability to just brick your Switch 2 at the drop of a hat, something that is actively being challenged in court right now. Purchasing a digital copy of a game online doesn't even give you the ownership of the game anymore. Rather, you are granted a license that can be revoked at any time. So yeah, maybe a movement to strengthen consumer rights in this industry is a force for good. I, along with many other gamers online, am not an expert on video game development or legislation, nor am I European, so I can't even sign on for the initiative. But my understanding of Stop Killing Games is that when a game is being sunset, that is to say that their servers are being taken offline and access to their online components will cease, that they will be left in a functional playable state once that process has happened. This can mean that the gameplay, the world of the game, is stored locally so that the player can still explore even if they can't play online in the case of MMOs, or that the source code is available for private servers to be built, that kind of thing. Just basically making it so that any and all purchases made by the consumer aren't just null and void when a developer or publisher arbitrarily decides that it's time to move on. And well, I sure do wish that I could fire up Dauntless whenever I wanted in the future. Hunt an Embermane or two, but I will never be able to do that again. Now, due to the fact that the internet loves to sensationalize everything, you can't really mention this initiative without mentioning Pirate Software. And I specifically want to mention him because, ironically, I spoke about him in my previous Dauntless video and praised him for his attempts to revive another game known as Project Dragon. At the time, I thought he was just a wholesome guy that encouraged people to make video games and have fun. I didn't really have my finger on the pulse of any drama. Pirate Software has become the villain of this tale because his takes on Stop Killing Games are, for lack of a better way of putting it, shit. And now I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's the devil incarnate as many others will. I honestly don't have a huge amount of exposure to the guy and believe that at his core, he's a dude who likes games, encourages people to make them, and is just a touch too arrogant or proud to ever change his mind on a matter. Thinks he always knows best. I don't buy that he's an industry plant or anything. I just think he's a bit of a dickhead. No one should be like threatening his life or anything though. That's not on. The gamers have a nasty habit of going way too far when anonymous online, when the topic is literally just silly little pixels on a screen. But criticism is fine. I understand he had some choice words about the founder of Stop Killing Games, Ross Scott, and that his hang-up is in the phrasing of documentation because it will kneecap the industry and developer freedoms. But like, isn't that an admission that the status quo is established in a way that hurts the consumer and that there needs to be reform to change that? Is there some things missing or in need of refinement in the Stop Killing Games documentation? Yeah, probably, but the heart and soul of it is to improve the way the system works in favor of the consumer. It is presented from the consumer's point of view. Anyway, he's got every right to do so, but he can't be surprised when people villainize him when all they want to do is continue playing their favorite games. The idea around this being way too hard to do seems a weird premise to me, because if games are built from the beginning with this in mind, isn't that hurdle entirely avoided? Haven't we had decades of games that we can play again and again? Sure, there might be some currently active games that have a big job ahead of them, and some in-development titles that get hit. There may be some temporary backlash that sees titles not released in Europe to skirt around this, but no publisher or developer is going to deny themselves the entire European market just to avoid leaving games in a playable state. In fact, I can think of one example of it being done the right way. Wayfinder is, much like Dauntless, a flawed game, but it is a game that has tried to do right by its player base. Developed by Airship Syndicate, it launched in 2023 as an MMO, and the moment-to-moment gameplay was pretty fun. The art style is one of my favorites because the guy who owns the studio was the lead artist of Darksiders, one of my favorite game series, but as an MMO, it was also released with all the typical live service bells and whistles. Microtransactions, always online requirements, all that crap. And things didn't go so well. First of all, the publishing division of their publisher went under, and that's never a great thing for a game's prospects. And in many other cases, that would be the end of the story. The game would have crashed and burned, those that purchased it would have been left in the dust, and everyone would have no choice but to move on. But that's not what happened. With the publishing rights transferred back to Airship Syndicate, they delisted Wayfinder and got to work turning it into a co-op action RPG. They removed all microtransactions, all mandatory online functionality, and then re-released it as Wayfinder Echoes months later. Now, this change, I imagine, was not easy, and the performance is still in need of improvement at certain points in the game, but they took it from an online-only game, one that would have died when it was taken offline, and produced a single-player or co-op experience, leaving it indefinitely in a functional, playable state. And really, whilst that might be Thor's hang-up, what does functional playable state really constitute? I think he's missing the forest for the trees. People just want to be able to play their games that they bought. They want to experience whatever game they've fallen in love with as much as they can forever. And there's nothing wrong with that. And just because I've never been heavily impacted by the way the system currently works, doesn't mean that I can't take a step back and understand where people are coming from, especially with my own personal anecdote fresh in my mind. And so that brings me back to Dauntless, an abandoned game with a troubled history, and an example of corporate greed weaseling its way into a game presented with the best intentions in mind. It was a game that deserved better, a game that was mishandled again and again, but I suppose now none of that really matters, because the operative word there is was. It's gone now, never to be seen again, but I do hope that people continue to make games like it. Make games that are built on developers' love for an existing franchise with their own twists and turns thrown in. I just hope that they stop getting deleted off the face of the earth in the future. Man, I wish I could play Dauntless again someday. What a bummer. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Just wanted to weigh in on the whole stop killing games thing. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good algorithm stuff. It helps the channel grow, and I would really appreciate it. If your interests extend beyond Monster Hunter and you want some more casual videos, you can check out Average Ginge, my other channel, which is not Monster Hunter focused like my main channel is. I'll leave a link for it in the description. Yeah, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See you later.